They say a person's true nature is revealed in their final moments. Some whisper prayers, some beg for mercy, and some crack a joke, taunt their executioners, or say something so bizarre it chills your blood. Today, we're diving into the creepiest last words ever spoken before execution, the final moments of 9 condemned souls whose words still echo long after their deaths. Number 1. Peter Kürten, the vampire of Dusseldorf. Peter Kürten was one of Germany's most notorious serial killers, dubbed the Vampire of Dusseldorf for his gruesome crimes committed during the late 1920s. He preyed upon men, women, and children, often engaging in acts of sadism and bloodletting that shocked even seasoned investigators. His crimes were driven not only by lust, but by a deranged fascination with the act of killing itself. Captured in 1930 and convicted of at least 9 murders, Kürten was sentenced to death by guillotine.
Guillotine? Sounds French.
On July 2, 1931, he was escorted to the execution chamber at Cologne prison. Before his beheading, Kürten turned to the prison psychiatrist and asked one of the most chilling questions ever recorded. "Tell me, after my head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." Moments later, his head rolled into the basket. Silence following words that still disturb the world nearly a century later. Number 2. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos remains one of America's most famous female serial killers. Between 1989 and 1990, she murdered 7 men in Florida, claiming each act was self-defense against men who attempted to assault her during her work as a sex worker. Her tragic upbringing and history of abuse made her a complex figure, but her crimes were brutal and unrelenting. After years of trials and appeals, Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison on October 9, 2002. When asked for her final statement, her words seemed to drift between religious fervor and science fiction. She declared, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with a rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back." Her strange combination of prophecy, faith, and cinematic reference left witnesses stunned. It was as if she wanted the world to believe that death wasn't the end, that she'd somehow return, not as a spirit, but as something cosmic. Number 3. James French. James Donald French, an American murderer, holds a unique place in death row history. Imprisoned for killing a motorist, he later murdered his own cellmate while already serving a life sentence. Why? Because he was too afraid to take his own life and wanted the state to do it for him. He made sure the act guaranteed him a death sentence. On August 10, 1966, at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, French was led to the electric chair. What makes his case unforgettable is not just his crime, but his morbid sense of humor. His last words were directed toward the assembled reporters. "How's this for your headline? French fries." The dark pun, referencing his last name and the electric chair, drew gasps and uneasy laughter. Some accounts suggest his actual last words were, "Everything's already been said, but the French fries line endures because it captures the chilling irony of a man who turned his own execution into a final punchline." Number 4. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, was responsible for the murders of at least 33 teenage boys and young men during the 1970s. He often lured his victims to his home under the guise of offering work, then assaulted, tortured, and killed them. Many of his victims were buried in the crawlspace beneath his house, a horror discovered after his arrest in 1978. Gacy maintained his innocence for years, insisting he was wrongly accused despite overwhelming evidence. On May 10, 1994, at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois, he was executed by lethal injection. When asked for his final words, Gacy sneered at the witnesses and said simply, "Kiss my ass." It was a vulgar, defiant end to a life defined by deceit and cruelty, a refusal to acknowledge his crimes or his victims. Even in death, Gacy chose arrogance over remorse, solidifying his legacy as one of America's most cold-blooded killers. Number 5. Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore's case became famous not just for his crimes, but for his attitude toward execution. Convicted of murdering 2 men in Utah in 1976, he gained international attention for demanding that his death sentence be carried out immediately, without appeal. His insistence on dying became a landmark moment after years of halted executions in the US. Finally, on January 17, 1977, Gilmore faced a firing squad at the Utah State Prison. When asked if he had any last words, he looked calmly at the men about to shoot him and said, "Let's do it." Those 3 words resonated across the nation, symbolizing eerie calm in the face of death. Ironically, decades later, Nike's advertising team would adapt the sentiment into their famous slogan, "Just do it." Gilmore's last words remain chilling precisely because they were so simple. No fear, no hesitation, just readiness to face the inevitable. Number 6. Thomas J. Grasso. Thomas Grasso was a convicted murderer responsible for killing 2 elderly victims in the early 1990s. His crimes were brutal, but what made him infamous was his peculiar behavior leading up to his execution. On March 20, 1995, he was executed by lethal injection in Oklahoma. Grasso's final words were not about guilt or forgiveness, but about his final meal. He said, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." The absurdity of the statements stunned witnesses. Facing death, Grasso's focus was on the kitchen's mistake. It was both darkly humorous and horrifying, a glimpse into a man so detached that his biggest concern before dying was a can of pasta. His words have since become a grim pop culture reference, reminding us that even in their final moments, some criminals show no sign of introspection, only pettiness and self-absorption. Number 7. Barbara Graham, Bloody Babs. Barbara Graham, nicknamed Bloody Babs, was executed in 1955 for her role in the brutal murder of an elderly woman during a robbery in California. Unlike many on death row, Graham maintained her innocence until the very end, claiming she had been framed. Her life was marked by hardship and poor choices, leading her down a dark path that ended in the gas chamber at San Quentin Prison. When the time came, she was calm but bitter. As the gas began to fill the chamber, she spoke her final words. "Good people are always so sure they're right." It was a haunting statement, one that could be interpreted as a jab at the justice system, at her executioners, or as society's tendency to moralize judgment. Whether guilty or not, Graham's final sentence lingers as a reminder that righteousness can sometimes carry an unsettling arrogance. Number 8. Clarence Ray Allen. Clarence Ray Allen's execution stood out because of his age and his demeanor. Convicted of ordering the murder of witnesses to cover up his earlier crimes, Allen spent over 2 decades on death row. By the time of his execution on January 17, 2006, he was 76 years old, legally blind, and confined to a wheelchair. Despite his frailty, he showed remarkable composure. His last words reflected an eerie serenity. "Hoka hey, it's a good day to die. Thank you very much. I love you all. Goodbye." The phrase Hoka hey comes from Lakota Sioux, often translated as it's a good day to die. In his final moment, Allen borrowed the phrase not as defiance, but as acceptance. It was a poetic end for a man who had orchestrated violence, but wanted to leave life on his own terms, cloaked in a warrior's dignity that few believed he had earned. Number 9. Wesley Allen Dodd. Wesley Allen Dodd's crimes were so horrific that even he insisted he deserved to die. Convicted of murdering 3 young boys in Washington state, Dodd became one of the most despised inmates in America. While most prisoners fight their death sentences, Dodd refused all appeals, claiming he would kill again if ever released. On January 5, 1993, he was executed by hanging, one of the last hangings in U.S. history. Before his death, he wrote and spoke publicly about his guilt, stating, "I must be executed before I have an opportunity to escape or kill someone else." He admitted that he enjoyed killing and that he couldn't be rehabilitated. It was one of the rare cases where the condemned men agreed wholeheartedly with the sentence. His last words didn't express remorse or fear, but a chilling awareness of his own monstrosity and relief that death would end it. And that's it for today's dive into the creepiest last words ever spoken before execution. Which one sent the biggest chill down your spine? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this dark journey through history, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another chilling story. Until next time, stay curious, and maybe think twice about what your last words might be.